So thanks everybody for joining and listening. We're gonna have a great interview today. We have two special guests here today. We have Balin Garza from HEB.
HEB.
Did I get that right? HEB?
You did.
I didn't say HEB.
Yeah.
And we have Paul Andrews, Vice President of Operations and Maintenance for Enchanted Rock. And then me, Pete DeSanto, Executive Vice President of Product Sales for Enchanted Rock. Just very quickly about me, I'm going to try not to suck the air out of the room. I've been with Enchanted Rock just about 5 years. We've spent most of my time, the first four and a half years or so, running operations, being involved in everything from commissioning all the way through the life of the sites. A fair amount of our sites are with HEB. So over time, you get to, through whatever name storm it was, going back to Yuri, Hannah, Beryl, a derecho, everything in between, just Texas weather in general. You forge a lot of good partnerships and relationships, and HEB is one of the most special ones for me personally, as well as Enchanted Rock. So it's a great honor to have the two of you here. Trade some notes, hear some stories, understand more about each of your individual businesses and philosophies, and just hop right in. So I like to do an icebreaker, and I'll go, it's more of, I'm kind of a Marvel comic guy, so I always go like Balin.
Yes.
For the audience and anybody that's listening and watch this, tell me your origin story. Where you get started, where you grew up, how did you, give me the timeline until you walked in the door today. What does that look like?
I am a true Texan. I can trace my people back all the way to Spain. So originally from Texas, that's how we call it. Born and raised in Laredo, Texas. My family's from Nuevo Laredo. I went to A&M. Loud and proud.
Oh, another A&M guy.
I know,
another A&M.
Another one. Loud and proud. Chemical engineer by training. My background is actually, again, oil and gas. I started fracking and cementing oil wells. I did that for about 5 years. And then I went into the chemical manufacturing role. I traveled all over the world. I got to see different, processes and how it is that they manage anything and everything, including power outages. So that's how I got into the energy world. And then I found HEB. So I've been with HEB close to 5 years.
So
now.
what was the pivot? So oil and gas,
Yes.
fracking, all West Texas,
Yes.
Laredo. You're in the capital of the energy industry
Correct.
in the United States and probably globally, right?
Correct.
And now you work for a grocery chain.
A grocery chain. Yes.
So what was the pivot that said, hey, I don't want to be in O&G anymore, and I wanted to kind of go retail grocery operations and...
Well, to be honest, I mean, it's all
what I would call critical
circle.
infrastructure. Yeah.
Right. It's a full circle because honestly, I can tell you how it starts from the actual whole and how it transfers to, going into refinery, what comes out of that, and then actually getting into the pipe. And then eventually, part of what we do at HEB is we do have a little business called gas stations. Mm-hmm. So that's how I pivoted into HEB, that I was like, okay, I know I'm a good salesperson. So let's go ahead and get into that. So again, funny story is I was actually looking for a power purchase agreement for my former employer when I met my current boss at HEB.
So you met George Presses, your boss, trying to sign a PPA with him?
Yes. No. So we were actually both looking for a PPA at a conference way back when. So that was in 2019. So we were both looking. He was looking for a PPA for HEB because in addition to managing, because technically my role at HEB, I am the business development manager for fuel and energy. So what does that mean? It means that I am responsible for making sure the lights are always on. So that's a great segue as to
we are too.
how it is that, we got here. But to making sure the lights are always on, that we're able to do what we do as an organization, which is be the grocer of Texans, right? So again, in my former life, I was looking for a partner that was going to help a chemical manufacturing site keep the lights on. And that's where George Presses and I met. And time went on, and he called me.
How did that happen? So you met George. You were both fighting over the same
PPA.
PPA.
Yeah, we were friends.
Who won that?
HEB did.
Okay. So you left the current place and went to the winner.
I did. That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Jumped ships right away. I was like, how did he beat me? So
George beat you, and then you had
right.
some
I was
sort
like,
of like Stockholm syndrome, and you were like, I gotta go work.
How did you do that? I thought I had it. So and then I ended up being.
And that was 2019.
That was 2019.
Now, was that the role you came into when you were at HEB? You went straight into
working with him, and working really because our role is a very servant role. Like we report to 145,000 people. HEB is 145,000 partners strong. So our role is for us to make sure that my partners at the stores and all of our manufacturing facilities, transportation services have what they need, right? So really HEB, I love how it works actually from the top down. And my role was to make sure that my partners in the ground had everything that they need in order for us to do what we do best.
So 145,000 employees. Let's park there for a second. That's got to put you in like the top 20, top 10 employers in Texas.
The top 5.
You're in the top 5 employers in the state of Texas. That's pretty amazing.
It's a lot of people, a lot of responsibility.
And you have stores in Mexico as well, too.
No, we actually have, we're 400, more than 400 stores strong across north of Mexico and just in Texas. So yeah, the roundup number is 400 stores. That's the easy one that I can remember.
Wow.
But yeah, we're
and then that's what you've been doing since 2019.
Since
is really just growing in that
role.
role.
If you guys remember, since 2019, it's been nonstop. I mean, it's been one event after another, including the pandemic. So
it's been busy in Texas when it comes to
my goodness. It's been nonstop. So it's been 5 years, but I feel like it's been 20. So it's been crazy. Since 2019, I've been doing the same role.
We're going to come back to 2019. We'll definitely do that. Now, Paul, you and I have known each other for a little while, but I don't want to spill all the jelly beans in the lobby.
Right out of high school, I went in the military as and joined the Navy as a gas turbine tech, working on jet engines. Military uses them for power generation. Got out of the Navy, went to my first power plant, and I spent better part of 28 years in power generation in one shape or form, starting off from operations, moving into maintenance, project management, doing things that I never thought I would do. And some of it made sense, some of it never made sense to me. But power generation was always just, hey, once it goes past the meter, I don't really care.
Right.
And I got this call, this opportunity to come down here to Texas and join a smaller company organization. I was like, why am I doing this? But it was people, it was culture that brought a bunch of things out. I said, okay, let's do it. And came down, and it was just, the first month that I was here, there was a situation, and it was at HEB across town, and they had some challenges. We rolled up, and it was on the store side. And so, long story short, we went through the whole process, different challenges. I went to the house, came back the next morning, and I saw something that changed me for who how I look at these things, because I saw the people out in front standing out there. And I remember Garth, who was working in the store. He'd worked all the way through the night, way too many hours than he should have. And I saw all these folks out there, and I was like, these are people I go to school with, go to the gym with, are my neighbors everywhere across the board. And they're out here making sure, because these folks out here in this parking lot, they may only go to the store once a week, but they're there, and the store is always open, right, making sure, taking care of the community. Yeah. So it's huge for me, because I go from large power generation, 2,000 plus megawatts, to
at a single site too, right?
At a single site, yeah.
So you're going from one location, prime mover, single prime mover, 2-on-1 turbine, gas turbine, steam turbine, 2,000 megawatts, and now 1.2 to 50 megawatts, depending on the site, California, and some growth. But talk to me a second, because we're going to talk microgrids a lot and resiliency, but like, what's the critical? I mean, when you're at a power plant, I would assume you were in some peaking plants. You weren't base loaded plants, right? You were at peaking plants. Talk a little bit about what the pressures of being a peaking plant and the economics, and what you did in your roles. Where, like, what was a bad day at a peaking power plant?
So at any given time, when you're in a power plant, whether it's a peaking or base load operation, you have millions of dollars on the line, and so if equipment goes offline, something happens, you don't make dispatch. You have significant risks that go along with that. So when you have an upset condition, it's all hands on deck. And you are literally moving as fast as you can in a safe, conscientious manner to make things happen. And so you are going through all of your different emergency response instructions, procedures, policies to turn that around, because you've got gas that you're supposed to burn. 2, you're supposed to be putting power on the bulk electric system. And if you're not making it, you're losing it, because you're going to have to buy it somewhere else to replace your power. And so it's
you might have had a PPA where you had to commit to provide the power at a certain price or whatever, and she was on the receiving end at one time saying, I
Correct.
want to buy that power. So you didn't, promise maker, promise keeper. You had to commit.
If I can't make my PPA, then we're buying power from somewhere else
Correct.
to make that on the spot
It's
market.
probably more expensive
It's
than
way more
making
expensive.
it your own.
Yeah.
It is way more
100%.
expensive. That's why we do those plans. We do the PPAs to control those costs.
Right.
Absolutely.
And now, how long at Enchanted Rock?
3 years.
3 years.
Feels like 10.
Now I hear that a lot. I hear that a
Yes.
lot. What does that mean when you say I call it dog years sometimes, but 3 years feels like 10. Why does it feel that way?
It feels that way because I'm not just working on a 75-acre site where it's small and condensed. I'm working across the state of Texas. And so there's a lot of stores, a lot of people out there, a lot of resources that are needed. So we may need help in one area. We may need some type of collaboration in another area. So having that ability to be like Gumby, just kind of stretch, get to where we need to be, and having just that flexibility. So
And there's no days off, right?
There's
There's
no
there's
days
days
off.
off, but the mindset of like HEB's open 7 days a week.
Correct.
Our other customers are open 24/7. There's no days off from the power's on, right? I mean, from a resiliency point of view, and the things that we do as Enchanted Rock and our customers do, like in your leadership role, like you bear a lot of that burden of.
there's no
You get to
days-
sleep every so often,
Occasionally.
occasionally.
But Pete, it'd be easy to say, hey, because I'd be a walking case for burnout. But here's the thing: I get to walk around Houston, Dallas, anywhere, and I know that I've helped these people out in one way, shape, or form. Whether it was a hurricane response, supporting a store in South Houston or North Houston, up in the Woodlands. I could walk around town anywhere, and I'm like, yeah, I feel with very high confidence I've supported my community, which is not something I was able to do in my previous roles.
And the funny thing is, I'll be honest, my wife, we've lived in a couple of different places. When we moved originally from Boston, we lived in Georgia, and when we were in Georgia, the only place to shop was really Kroger.
Mm-hmm.
It's the K word, sorry.
Right.
And so my wife will still go to Kroger sometimes, and she'll shop at 3-4 different places. But if it's my responsibility at a certain time to say, hey, I want to go do the grocery shop, and I always go to HEB.
Good. We appreciate it.
And the funny thing is, she goes, which HEB did you go to? I'm like, I went to 616. She's like, where? What? I'm like, well, I know them by store numbers, so I went to
Right.
HEB 616. That's my
Right.
local store.
Right. Or we go by store numbers, we go by names.
Yeah.
It just varies where you're at.
I go to Buffalo Heights.
Correct. That's
What's the store number?
Oh, you got me there.
622.
Yeah, 612.
So let's get into it. So I mean, Hurricane Beryl. I mean, we're going to talk a lot more about some of the events that have come through.
Yes.
But and I have a whole list of questions here. But let's get right into it. And so from your side, on the store side, what's a power disruption? Talk to me about if you're de-energized at one of your locations, one of your stores, 616, 715, you name it, you lose power.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Like what happens?
Well, I'll give you
what
something-
happens? Like walk me through what
give you
that looks
something better.
like
I
from
mean-
a financial point of view, from a store location.
Disruptions are something that, HEB has been very lucky to partner with someone like Enchanted Rock to avoid those disruptions, right? For us specifically at HEB, a power disruption, it is extremely painful because we take our food quality and food safety extremely serious. That is a promise that we have, to our customers, that you're not going to find the freshest, safest food anywhere but with us, right? And we take that to heart and we live it every day. So whenever there is a power outage for us, there is a timer. We start counting the time. After 4 minutes, we have to start taking some measures because, as everybody knows, wherever y'all shop at, there's those big meat containers that are the
Right.
open freezers. So we need to start moving things around and putting them in an actual, container that has a door. And if that specific freezer is used and doesn't have the space, then we have to move
And
it to the
potentially
back.
in the dark too, right?
And we're in
with
the dark.
emergency
Correct.
lighting
There's
or
the
something
emergency
like
lighting that will, help us out, but still it's having to move partners around from the front, teaching them if they've never been through a power outage, what to do.
Meanwhile,
what
you
to
have
move
customers in the store
first.
too, right?
We have customers in the store. So
Or in
it's
the
just-
elevator.
the elevator one is another story that
we'll just back up
we'll
on
get to that
elevators.
one later. But I mean, it's just it disrupts again, and for us specifically, the food quality is and food safety is extremely important to us, because if we're not able to keep the temperature that the food needs, then we start tossing things out.
Right.
And we need to either
You're in risk mitigation
Correct.
mode of I don't want to put
I
a
don't want
customer
to
at
risk.
risk.
Correct. I don't want to risk the customer's health. So we start calling the open tops containers, and then we start putting things in the back, and then everybody is seeing in the news. People actually go and hunt the food that is in that container, and that's not something that we ever want to see. And having partnerships like you all are helping us avoid that. But it's just it's things like that we take to heart, and we want to avoid at all costs. So for us, it's a power disruption, a power outage is extremely painful. So in addition to having customers, why are the lights off, and why is my HEB not open, and for us, we want to avoid that, because we're
There's
during
other
a power-
options out there, right?
there's not that many options out there, and I mean, mind you, we sell everything at HEB. There's water, there's food, we have pharmacies, like you can get anything and everything at our HEB. So we like to be a pillar in the community, and having quality power helps us do that. So yeah, it's very, take it to heart.
Now, you say the timer. So what's the kind of there's various timers, right? You have the say 4 minutes, but
Right.
there's always that. What's the point of what's the Rubicon, a point of no return, where you say, all right, this is a problem. Now I got to milk, cheese, refrigerated projects, frozen products. Like, what's that?
We start moving.
You can recover at a certain point, right? And say I can mitigate my loss at a certain point. But there's a line in the sand when you're like, we're done. Throw it all out.
About less than 2 hours.
About 2 hours, right? Yeah. So Paul, no pressure on you. So the stores that have the gear. So when you hear about any power interruption or the gear didn't come on, like, how do you respond? What does that look like for you and the team that you have here at Enchanted Rock?
Well, for me, it's immediately I'll stop for anything that I'm engaged with right then. It's finding out who's on their way, how far out are they. All of our personnel are GPS tracked, so we can map it out. We know exactly how long it's going to take to get there. We've got a team of engineers and specialty personnel in the background. Some of them would be challenged if I called them an engineer, but we've got some awesome people in the background that will remote in, look at the gear, look at what's going on, see if there's anything that we can do remotely while our personnel and the MCC.
And leverage the NOC, right? The Network Operations Center that's always watching.
And it's great. I mean, again, HEB thrives on what we do because of our partners. So something that we're very happy with you all is the fact that, when I call anybody that's on the NOC, it's like, what's happening, and is anybody on their way, right? Like, was this on y'all's radar? I've never gotten a no as an answer. And it's like, okay, well, how long is it going to take me? Because the worst thing that we can do to my store partners is leave them in the dark, literally, and not tell them, hey, this is going to be resolved. By when they get there, they have the parts, they're going to be able to fix it, just give me a couple more hours, and then instead of them, maybe we can call dry ice instead of throwing everything out. Right. So, that's something that we're extremely grateful that you guys have been
because you
helping us
didn't
with.
always have Enchanted Rock, right? I mean,
We
can
did
kind of
not.
talk the
We
talk
did
the
not.
origin story between Enchanted Rock and HEB
Yes.
back in the, I think it was like 2017.
So we've been working together now for 10 years.
Is it 10 years
So
now?
it's been a 10-year partnership. We have 190 systems installed across industrial facilities.
But there was a point where you had like 2 megawatt diesel trailers.
Correct.
That you had, I think, at like HRSC or something like stations,
Correct.
you know,
And
or
we still do.
SADC,
We
and
still do.
you have some of them set up.
Yeah.
But what was your storm preparedness plan? You may not have been there. This might have been prior to you in
Correct.
2019, and maybe it's anecdotally from George,
Mm-hmm.
your boss. But I'd always heard of this. Well, there's a storm coming. It's a named storm. It's on the radar.
Correct.
It's in the Gulf. It's coming this way. Let's try to pre-position
Correct.
and scatter like where we think the highest incident of an outage is going to be, and kind of like pre-position these diesels in advance.
Correct.
And I'd always heard that you guys shouldn't probably go to Vegas and bet sports bet or something like that, because
Yes.
it was really tough to predict
Correct.
with the scope and density of your locations across the state of Texas, or potentially a large storm path with only a finite amount of diesel
Correct.
assets.
And people assets,
and
right?
people
Right,
assets to
right.
hook them up, and contractors and your partners out there to hook them
Correct.
up. It's really tough to have high accuracy on that, right?
100%.
And then I think it was Harvey timeframe. Was it Harvey?
It
You
was
guys had
Harvey.
already
Everybody
partnered with
Yes.
HEB,
Correct.
and Enchanted Rock had already started and had a couple of locations already set up. With gens in place, the gas in place, and already had resiliency there,
Mm-hmm.
and then it turned into they were like mini distribution centers.
Correct.
In the middle of Harvey. And Harvey, for those that don't know and haven't been in Texas, I mean, that was 3 weeks of flooding, and
Life-changing, yeah.
it was a really tough event where just hurricane came in, but the water had nowhere to go, and
Right.
it was flooded
Stayed there,
it just
yeah.
stayed there for a really long time, and it was just a huge interruption to a lot of people's lives and equipment and businesses. So, but again, so talk to me if you could about the philosophy of HEB, because I want to say it's pretty cutting edge for you guys to have made an investment and said, I am going to have a resiliency plan across your stores. Like, what did that look like in economic impact? And if you could quantify that, of what did that look like? And because I mean, you have them at almost every location.
Correct.
So what led you down that path to kind of go full in?
We're very good at betting. I'll give you that. Yeah, we're very good in Vegas. Every time that I go to Vegas, I win.
Well,
But so when Harvey happened, we had 30 systems online, and with Enchanted Rock. And to your point before, we have a world-class emergency preparedness group. Joaquin and Justin and everybody in that group is just, they know exactly what they're doing. And the whole reason why we have the HEB Halo is because of that group, right? Who I think you guys have worked with. They do their research, tap into a lot of, consultants, and they read, and amazing group of people. So every time that there was a hurricane forming, we had, as an organization, an SOP, standard operating procedure, as to where it is that we have our key stores. Usually we go by sales or location. If there is a specific store that is the biggest, flagship store, because each city has it, that it's like, okay, this is the one that has the most resources. That's the one that we're going to make sure it has a diesel generator, and we keep powering it. For us, during Harvey specifically, what was extremely hard was getting the diesel to the generator. Because during an emergency,
not even getting the generator there.
The
Generator's already
generator
there.
was in place. The generator
Keeping
was in
fuel
place.
in the
Correct.
generator.
So we put the we put every generator that we install, the second it's hooked up, we put it in a gas route. But because of Harvey, we couldn't reach it. So we had some stores go dark because we couldn't reach it. Mind you, again, I mentioned we had 30 Enchanted Rocks.
Right.
The 30 Enchanted Rocks were functioning, and for us, that was the first trial that it's like, oh my goodness,
I don't have to worry about fuel.
I don't have to worry about that. So emergency preparedness group, Justin Noakes, he once told me, I get to sleep now because of Enchanted Rock. We know that you guys are always going to have the lights on, and we don't have to keep asking the diesel guys, hey, where are you going, or where are you guys at?
Well, everybody else is trying to get diesel.
Well,
at the same
everybody's
time.
trying to get diesel, and then there's a
Contract, no contract.
Correct. It's just it was for us. It's a peace of mind, asset to have in our facility. So, Harvey was a very different storm for us, because if you remember, it hit Houston, and then it moved back into the Gulf, and then it came back. Pivoted.
I watched it from afar.
Oh,
I didn't live in Texas at the time.
It pivoted, and it hit San Antonio.
Lived in
So it was
Georgia.
going to take all of our distribution centers out. And it was we had never experienced that. We have different distributions across the state. We're expanding our distribution network across the state to serve our newly opened Metroplex market. But it was going to take 3 out of the 5 distribution centers out in just one storm, and that had never occurred to us. So that's where we saw the light, and we're like, okay, we need to get Enchanted Rock everywhere.
Because that was a big investment on your part, right? It was more of an insurance
100%.
policy, right? And
100%.
peace of mind. But that was a big move.
It was.
That was boss-like moves to say,
So
hey,
since-
I'm gonna do this everywhere.
Yeah, so since 2017 till now, again, we had 30 then, we have 190 now, and we're not stopping.
Right.
So, yeah,
So Paul,
it's been great.
no pressure on you. What's your philosophy on, storm preparedness, and when a storm comes in? Like, you got a lot of responsibility, you got a lot of team. What's storm prep look like for you?
When you have a storm coming in, that's not the time to be getting ready. It's time to already be ready, because everybody else is looking for resources. They're looking for the components that you may or may not already have. And so if you're trying to close those gaps, you're a couple days late to the punch. So really, it starts way before hurricane season. These events, making sure that fleet's operationally ready, making sure that we've got all of our bells and whistles checked to go through there. And then it goes back to the training that is incorporated with our technicians to make sure that they have the knowledge and the experience that goes along with that. And then the next stage is one, so I get a little bit of sleep, training some of our other folks to do some of the incident command portions of it.
Storm center, whatever you want to call it.
Storm center, war room, some of the different things we've done before in the past where we had significant events occur, and then working together as a team, group, organization to adapt, overcome whatever challenges they came up. And there's always a new challenge that pops up. Some of it's realized, some of it's not. But then it's also working with our partners to say, hey, we're having this challenge. What can you do to help us with that? And that's come up more than once. So when you've got weather coming in, you should already be ready.
So what makes it easy for you to be ready? Is it the modular design? Is it the technician training? Like what's the real backbone of what makes it easy?
So
simple, but not easy to be ready.
It's the modular design. I can bring folks from anywhere in our fleet and bring them into Houston, or I can send people from Houston out to those other areas. And by and large, it's a standardized modular design. There's some uniqueness as we go out into different places and regions. So that increases the volume of people that I have. And I always hire local resources, so I'm not bringing people from, so if you put a new store in Dallas and I need a tech up there, I'm hiring in Dallas. But it's the modularity of the design. If we do have a challenge or an issue, we're skilled enough where we can turn those jobs around pretty quick. We have great gear. We have some of the fantastic gear that's out there, but you have to have a fantastic service group that goes along with that. And that's part of the service package.
So when they're doing so what does the maintenance cycle look like? So, I mean, it's not we set the gear and then when it runs, and we'll go take a look at it. I mean, what does the maintenance model look like?
If you don't do your maintenance, the equipment will let you know when it needs maintenance is due. And so with the modular design, you have a 50-hour service, and then as soon as that 50 hours up, your next interval is going to be at 750 hours. And that could be a couple of years, depending on the run profile. It could be a lot shorter period of time, just depending on whatever condition it is. In the general configuration, we've got an N+1 configuration.
Not everybody's going to know what N+1 means.
N+1, it means you have additional reserve capacity at the site, so you can shut one unit down, do the maintenance on it, and then maintain power reliability to the facility. So if we were in a sustained operation where a store was down for a month or 2 months from loss of utility power, it's zero interruption. We're not missing any maintenance intervals with that.
So if you need 2 gens to cover the store load, there's a third gen, which is the +1.
Yes.
Aaron is bear. That's what I do.
Hey, I speak service and O&M.
No, that's what I'm here for. Thanks for making me feel useful. I appreciate that.
What does that mean,
Not everybody's
Paul?
going to know what N+1 is
Right.
or 2N or what that kind of concept is, and how you would actually deploy it, right? So long duration outage. That's why we've skirted around the fuel issue, and you've been in fuel and you've been on the energy side. I mean, I'm originally a merchant mariner. I sailed on large, medium speed diesel ships. Love diesel. Love the smell of diesel. Mm-hmm. But it's not as resilient of a fuel source as piped natural gas that's resilient, right? Especially in Texas, with the amount of storms that we have, natural gas is just so much more resilient. Don't get me wrong. Every so often, if there's a de minimis gas leak or somebody smells gas behind a store,
Correct.
they call the local gas provider, and they instantly come out and they just shut everything off. And then we may or may not know, and that's probably the most nuisance thing we see in general. And it's not rampant, but it's like, hey, there might have been a small gas leak or something, and it's like they just shut the gas off.
Right.
And then we find out afterwards.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It happens, but part of us.
The doc's calling, going like, "Hey, I'm reading gas pressure is continuing to decrease."
Exactly. We have remote indication of these things, so when these upset conditions come up, we start getting alarms. What's going on here? We're paying attention to it. Our internal process. We start mobilizing personnel, figure out, hey, what's going on? And sometimes it's, something simple, sometimes it's complicated, and it's not HEB trying to figure out the problem. It's us.
And sometimes it's bad timing. Where
Oh, yeah.
I think it was the derecho that came through. What was it,
Oh, my
4
goodness.
months ago? And there was one store location where, just during the normal route, there was a small gas leak I think it was on the meter or on the header or something like that. And it was also the day that the derecho came
Right.
through.
Right.
And I remember being on the phone with George going, hey, what can we do? And he's like, I'm calling the gas company because it's HEB, and HEB, they're going to answer because, goddamn it, I'm George and I'm with HEB. I'm like, good, you call them. I'm going to have a technician there. I'm going to make sure that, I think Jesse went out there or something like that. But it was lining up the technician and the gas to be there. And can you have them there? Because if we don't have somebody there,
They're not going to fix it.
they're not going to fix it. They're just going to move on.
Right.
And it was just that collaboration and coordination. And
Mind you,
again,
we're just coordinating one before we had to coordinate 30.
Right.
With so I mean, it's just, again, we're able to sleep a little bit more now with it being natural gas instead of diesel.
So you guys have been through some storms. What's your, I'm going to do air quote, what's your favorite
I
storm?
know.
I'll start with you, Balin. So what's your, you've been with HEB since 2019.
Yes.
There's been more than enough storms. What was your favorite storm? What's the one that stands out to you the greatest out of the whole?
I think the one that completely changed my mindset about everything in life, to be honest, was Yuri. Because if you guys remember, Yuri was still during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was extremely personal, actually. And I'm going to get super vulnerable.
Please do.
So
We got it on camera.
good. I know it's like, don't for the whole state and everybody to know. No, but I mean, this one was near and dear to my heart because my brother was actually hospitalized with COVID for 10 days. So he left the hospital on Wednesday. And if you guys remember, Yuri started on Monday. So he was actually in need of hooking up the oxygen little tank that they send you home with. And his power was out. So for me, it was extremely, life-changing to be able to say, hey, if your power doesn't come back, go to this store because I know it has power, right? And I was able to do that throughout the state. And mind you, during Yuri, 80% of the state lost power at some point.
Right.
And it was very humbling to say, if you guys need anything, go to a store because I know which ones have power. So I was able to tell my family, in Laredo, in Dallas, in San Antonio, if you guys aren't able to get to my house, because I had power, lived close to the medical center, but not everybody had that luxury. So knowing what stores had power during a huge catastrophic event was, again, very humbling and gave me, a new perspective as to why it is what we do, right? Why it is that we partner with someone like Enchanted Rock. And the 5 days that it lasted, we had store partners sleeping in, conference rooms. We had utility partners asking us, hey, do you mind if we charge our phones or charge our laptops, or we work in your conference room? Of course, right? So it was more of a coordination as to where do we have you guys on, and do you guys have enough gas to power the store? We had some issues, right? But again, it was very humbling to be able to serve our community the way that we did during Yuri. So
yeah, I had been on board for about a year and a half at the time in Enchanted Rock,
something else.
and the operations team, and that's when George and I really forged our relationship,
Right.
and I think you and I did too that
Right.
week, because it was just constant communication, and
my
like
God.
Corey Amthor, our president of Enchanted Rock, had really owned that relationship with George and was
Yes.
really the go-to person, and I wouldn't say shield George for me or what my role was, but that
Right.
was this is George Press's, deal with him direct.
Yes. Because it
Because
was
a
great.
lot.
It was a lot.
like different stores, different challenges.
It was a lot.
And again, it was we were wildly successful,
We did.
both of
We
us.
did great.
And it was so great to just think about the mission focus of what HEB is doing for the community, what we're doing for HEB as a partner, and it was some pretty trying times. I mean, I'm from Boston. You probably heard the accent, and 6 inches of ice and snow on
Yes.
I-10 was not a big deal for
It
me
was
because I've
not.
driven in the snow, but for everybody else, that was a
Right.
big deal. Even
Correct.
just commuting around and getting to where they needed to, as well as our technicians on the road that were servicing the equipment, because that was, 70, 80, 90 hour duration outages
Yes.
and some of the rolling blackouts,
Yes.
as well as the ERCOT market was at $9,000 a megawatt hour. So even if the store was energized by utility, we were running our
People
gear
can afford
full
it.
out
Yeah.
because of the dual purpose and the nature of how
Correct.
our economics work with the microgrids. And I
Right.
mean, it was Super Bowl week, right?
It
For
was-
both you guys
yes.
supporting the community,
Correct.
as well as for us supporting you and the grid and keeping it, energized where we could in certain circuits.
And
it was
it's funny
just-
because for me, it was, my mom's HEB had power because of you all. So I would tell my mom, hey, go to HEB if the house, because houses got really cold feet. It was.
But people were going there to get just to warm up, right?
Just to
I mean, if
warm
they
up.
had electric heat at home and they were in a
Correct.
rolling blackout, there was nothing.
We
right?
had people hanging out at the store, and we had specific areas where they could, sit, charge their phone, talk to their loved ones. And I mean, in that week, we lost 250 Texans because of it, right? So that's
Right.
always in the back of my mind.
It was
Yeah,
an
so
unbelievable event.
yeah, it's just that's always in the back of my mind. And, I want people to know HEB has power. And it's because of partners like you, right? So.
And I remember that one story. I mean, and Paul, you weren't on board at the time, but there was one. I think it was a store in Austin that had lost power because we didn't have our gear there. It was for whatever reason we didn't have our gear at that store. It hadn't been installed yet, or there was some roadblock to reason out of our control.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it lost power. And
You made the New York Times.
what's that?
The one that made the New York Times.
Yeah,
article?
because and again, that's why I'm humbled by HEB and their philosophy
Yes.
because there were people in the store,
Right.
staying warm, whatever they needed to do, getting groceries and charging their phones, whatever it needed to be,
Mm-hmm.
and you just let people leave with the food because it was going to spoil
It was gonna
anyways, and you
spoil.
knew that you weren't probably coming back from an outage, so it
Correct.
wasn't like, hey, let me figure out how to do point of sale, and it was just go take it.
It's the right thing to do.
And help the community. And again, the right
Right.
thing to do. And it
Right.
wasn't to get a New York Times article, whatever.
No.
Like that's how
We found that after the fact, right?
Yeah, it wasn't for show. That's just who you
Right.
guys are.
It's just we honestly live by the right thing to do, and at this point, having power for us, it's the right thing to do because, again, in 5 years we've lived a lot of events together, and it's been one thing after another, and I honestly don't think it's going to slow down. Right? It's going to continue to happen, and for us, again, we want to be able to serve our communities to the best that we can, and having power helps us do that.
Right. So it's kind of like what I view as like kind of I wouldn't say the double whammy. That's negative, but I mean you get to help the community out, as well as you don't have any product losses or insurance claims or anything like that. Because I mean you hit that 2-hour mark during like Yuri where you potentially had 200-300 stores that may have been de-energized
Right.
at $300,000-$500,000 of product loss per store.
Right.
Like that's a big economic impact to one,
Huge.
your brand, to the community you serve, as well
Right.
as the bottom line is the
Huge.
organization, right? And to
Huge.
have something in place already across all those stores.
Yeah, for
'cause
us
you
it's-
made that decision early on, well in advance
Correct.
of that unique event called Yuri.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, in Yuri, I think we had close to 130 systems on. So yeah, I remember that.
It
store.
was
Yeah.
it was busy. But
It
yeah,
was
that store.
very
I just remember
busy.
seeing that in the news, going, and again, being a prideful person sometimes on that stuff, going like, I help the community, and a lot of
Yes.
our team, a lot of our management team,
You
and a
guys
lot of
do.
the senior leaders, they view it that way, and that's. I mean, honestly, it's one of the things that helps us recruit and retain good talent. Is like this is the mission we do, and this is how we, serve the community.
Right.
And it's not just we create we vibrate electrons and put them on the grid, and it's like okay, it's like no, we actually
Right.
back up and protect the
100%.
community, right?
I mean, everybody thinks of HEB as being, we have this halo that everybody, it's like, oh, HEB is the best. It's like, we are the
But you
best.
do the work.
No,
It's
we
not like
do
you
the
don't
work.
just show up.
We do
Like you
the
do all the
100%.
work.
We do the work, but we're only as good as our partners, store partners, our managers, our directors, our VPs, and our partners like you all, right? Our outside vendors. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without you all. So I want you to know that we really appreciate what y'all do.
We appreciate you
for
too.
us.
Now I want to switch to Paul because the other side of the coin is
I know, it's like,
keeping it all
Paul,
running.
no
So
pressure.
Paul, no pressure. But what's your favorite storm? What's the storm in your mind? And there's a lot to pick from, even the short amount of time, 3 years of being here. Like, what's your favorite storm?
So
That's
for
air
Yuri,
quotes
I was up
favorite.
in Ohio, and in Ohio it was cold enough, and all I did was read about it in the news, and I had friends and family down here for Yuri, but that's not the one that stands out for me. I've been in the power industry for a very long time, all sorts of hurricanes, but it's 75 acres. I'm not worried about what's going on outside my fence. But when Hurricane Beryl came through here, it was a game changer. From the moment the event happened to what was going on in the community, it was all hands on deck. I had technicians who didn't have power. They were leaving their homes, their families, to go out to check, make sure that things were up and running. Well into 12 hours into the event, going out, checking gear, making sure, did we have challenges? Yeah, we had some challenges. By and large, we did, we had a very good performance. But I had technicians who didn't have food, so what was I doing? I was going around the corner, going over to HEB, walking through the lines. And when you walk into the store, you have people out there charging their phone, on the computer, doing, whatever business they could. People go in the stores. And I remember, living down in Florida, hurricane comes in, all the bread, the milk's gone. Right, everybody panics. They go into those stores. They
Eggs
got them.
too. Everybody
yeah.
makes French toast in the store.
But the stores were fully stocked. Nobody was going in panicking. You didn't see people walking out with 12 cases of water. You saw people case here, case there. A lot of civilized folks doing civilized things, and so we went through this whole event as a city, and it kind of blew my mind because, yeah. People had access to food, water, resources. Yeah, we were uncomfortable. It was a little hot, But, if it hadn't been for HEB having stores open online, Enchanted Rock keeping those stores open with power, it'd be a very different evolution. People would be very upset in a challenging situation. And so just going through peril was a challenge enough. And every time we walk into an HEB, we're treated just like family, just like we're employees that go along with that. And so it's always a pleasure, and sometimes we have an upset condition. All right, we roll into it. Sometimes it's just an evolution that we got to work with as a partnership. And I'm treated just like a regular employee with part of the family and stuff. So it makes my life a whole lot easier. During Beryl, we ran into some challenges where we lost cell service that impacted everybody, but we didn't anticipate the widespread power outages sustained like that. So we started having some fuel challenges for our own vehicles to get around, and it was a phone call to HEB and say, hey, these are some of the challenges. Be part of that partnership. And George had ideas and plans to support us should we get to that point. We found some mitigation steps to go along with it. But just as we're working to support HEB is working to support us. And it's part of that amazing thing. It's something I've never seen anywhere else in the industry. And, I like to be pretty proud that I was part of, keeping Houston alive, keeping Houston civilized in what was going on. And I don't know of any other major city in the United States that's got the resiliency that Houston does.
And that's Houston, San Antonio, Austin.
Right, the state.
Well, Dallas. I mean, that whole metroplex is even down in Laredo and West Texas. I mean, I'd rather be in Texas during a storm than somewhere else.
Yeah, I've lived all over the world. I've traveled all over, through Asia and in multiple foreign countries. And being in major cities like Tampa, Orlando, San Francisco, Atlanta.
Hurricane prone as well.
And they don't have the infrastructure for the grocery chain that Houston does directly with HEB. So if you have widespread outages through those territories, if it's a sustained duration, you've got major challenges. People don't have access to food and water.
Yeah. I'm watching the news on just Helena right now, and I'm going, one, the devastation, and two, just couldn't imagine that happening to Houston, and be happy that HEB would be protected. But there's a lot of, it's pretty damaging, and days and weeks without power, water, or air conditioning, because it gets freaking hot over there too. And I don't know, it's rewarding to be doing what we're doing.
It's very rewarding. Pete, we're talking a lot about the store level too, but we also have the distribution centers for HEB that we cover.
That's right. That's a whole other topic of the IFS group, right? What you guys internally is that industrial facility services. And that's really your distribution. Those are your plants, right? Because HEB, talk to me about it's not just, you have your own HEB brand, but
we make our own chips.
The snack plant, we call it the snack plant. It smells like potato chips. I love it. But snack plant, if it goes into an outage or has, even the 7 seconds between utility dropping and our gens coming on and covering load within 7 seconds, you still have waste byproduct because if you're making potato chips, as simple as that sounds, you're making potato chips and there's a power interruption, like you could light the place on fire, right? I mean,
crispier.
It's crispier. It's crispier. But that's a big deal,
It
right?
is.
I mean, as well as, I mean, you do your own dairy plant, ice cream plant, cold storage. I mean, bread. I mean, you can't keep enough bread on the shelf, right? If you lose power at your bakery, like you have to go sub that out. You have to go figure out how to keep the shelf stocked,
Correct.
right? I mean, you're at that much demand
Correct.
that if you would just have an empty shelf if you have a power interruption, right? And
that's unacceptable in our world.
that's
right.
Mm-hmm. That's probably a bad day, right? And then you're scrambling to figure out who's going to make bread and the quality
Correct.
for HEB that you're comfortable putting your label on it.
Correct.
That sounds like a lot of work
it
versus
is
just
a lot of
keep your location energized, right?
Correct. Yeah. So that's why we put you guys there.
So I actually have an anecdotal story. So my what sticks out to me, I mean, don't get me wrong, I have a battle list of all the different storms, and two come to mind. One was Hannah, right? It was about 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It came into like the Brownsville, southern Texas. It was Brownsville to Corpus Christi. I think HEB had 27 to 30 stores that are in the storm path. And I love the collaboration of, hey, can we just preemptively island those stores, put them on gens, right? So close transition from utility power to the gens, completely disconnect them from utility and run them through the duration of the storm. And that to me was like that collaborative, and we had collaborated on the other storms as